There we go.
All right.
Okay. So welcome us to something.
What?
Welcome to something. Kick us off.
Kick us off?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey,
So wait.
Brian, Chad, this is Collector's Confessions, and we're here today with
Tom
your name?
Kaczynski from Uncivilized Books.
Excellent, from Uncivilized. And the reason we looked up Uncivilized in the first place was because I bought issue 1 of The Sickness during a recent visit to a comic store. Actually, I bought it mainly because of the art on the cover. I was very, very, very impressed with that cover illustration. And you want to tell us a little bit about The Sickness to start off with?
Sure. So The Sickness is it's an ongoing series, but it's going to be 14 issues ultimately.
Mhm.
And it's like a body horror series. It's sort of set in 50s America, although it kind of jumps a little bit around in time.
Yeah.
And it has this kind of like Junji Ito vibe to the art. Very kind of like dark horror, kind of weird and spooky and kind of discomforting.
Yeah.
And the story basically follows, kind of there's two timelines. One timeline follows this young boy who's sort of is having a hard time with other kids and things, and just kind of keeps seeing these bizarre hallucinations of people sort of becoming crazy, crazy. Crazy horror type things, transformations, etc. And then in another timeline, there's a doctor that's looking for this strange disease that's very rare, but it causes these hallucinations. So there's kind of like two timelines where we kind of see maybe potentially patient zero versus and then this doctor trying to figure out what's going on, where this came from, and all that stuff. So it's kind of an interesting kind of tension there. And then in the fourth issue, which is about to come, you'll start seeing some color creeping into the series, because right now it's been all black and white. But there's going to be just a tiny little bit of color in the fourth issue, and then color is going to slowly kind of creep into the rest of the story. So it's kind of it's an interesting storytelling device. So it's a really great series. We've had really great response on that, and
You did a whole bunch of variant covers for that first issue, right?
Yeah. The creators, Lonnie Nadler's and Jenna Cha, they've got a lot of friends in the industry, and they just got a lot of people on board to kind of do a lot of different covers. So yeah, we have a lot of kind of classic horror folks doing covers. One of the covers was done by now I'm totally blanking on the name. This Japanese artist, horror artist, not Ito, but Kobe. I'm blanking on the name. I have to like dig it out. I can send it to you later.
Perfect.
Just completely blanking on it right now. But yeah, there were 5 different covers, and that first edition sold out like almost instantly. We had to go into second edition. I think that's what you got, is the green one.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the fluorescent ink. We printed that with fluorescent ink.
Yeah.
So we got lucky with that one because our normal comic shop doesn't carry stuff like that. Like how are you distributing? We got it from a place we went to, and the guy gets like as many independent comics as he possibly can. That's his
cool.
big thing. So he distributes, and he was, showing us some of the new stuff coming out. Yours happened to be one of the ones that he showed us, and Brian took a liking to it. How are you distributing?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of distributors. So I have, we actually started as a graphic novel company originally. So that's kind of where our kind of most of the energy still goes into graphic novels. And so we work with Ingram on that. It's which is a big, distributor. One of the top 5 sort of book distributors in North America. So that's kind of our distributor for graphic novels. And then for comics, we are working with Diamond and Lunar both. So we've been able to get this stuff out there pretty widely. Obviously, everybody can, every store is able to order, as long as they work with either one or the other. They can order through the previews or through Lunar, their usual channels there. And then we do also, there's some retailers that just like our stuff a lot, so they order direct from us. So we can do that as well. So we have a pretty wide kind of range of options.
And where are you guys headquartered?
We're in Minneapolis.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
How long you been publishing?
We've been around now since 2011. Yeah, 2011. It's
Okay.
almost like
That's
12
great.
years. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I was looking through some of your other titles that seemed interesting. Ginseng Root is a big one for you, right?
Yeah, yeah. We just published the final issue of that. There was a 12 issue limited series that's ultimately going to get collected, obviously. But this is by Craig Thompson, who many might know from Blankets, which was a big
Yes.
graphic novel in the
Mhm.
early 2000s. And I think still one of the best-selling graphic novels of all time, at least for in like I think it's been translated to 30 languages too. Anyway, it was a big book.
Yeah.
And
Blankets
then,
is a
yeah,
big deal.
Ginseng Roots is I actually have some here if you can show.
Interesting story.
Yeah, it was like a 12 issue series.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's kind of a smaller format than the typical comics format. It's
Mhm.
like 6 by 9. It was printed in 2 colors. Gonna show off some of Craig's great work here. You know, 2 colors.
Yeah, it's beautiful work.
Yeah, he's one of the best. Like really beautiful stuff.
Yeah, that's nice.
And yeah, basically follow it. It's kind of a follow up on Blankets, but it's much Blankets. There was a lot of fictionalization going on in Blankets, whereas with Ginseng Roots, he becomes more of like a journalist or something, where he goes back to his hometown and sort of gets interested in the ginseng industry, which Wisconsin was one of the biggest ginseng growers in the world in the 80s.
Oh, that's
Kind of
interesting.
when he was growing up there, and he worked on the farms, et cetera, et cetera. So he's just kind of interested in that whole industry, and interviewed a ton of people, a ton of farmers, all kind of from that around that area where he grew up, which is kind of around Marathon, Wisconsin, and then also traveled to some, where sort of the origins of ginseng were, like in South Korea and in China, and kind of traveled those regions, interviewed a lot more people. So just kind of gives you this great it's a great story. It kind of starts from small town America, and then just becomes this global story and history of this particular medicinal herb that's been around. That's actually the first American cash crop too. It's like that was being grown specifically for export, which is pretty interesting.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah. So it's just a great story. Lots of new information, and kind of the usual amazing Craig Thompson art. And I think with the second color, he really kind of knocked it out of the park.
Yeah.
So how do you get someone like Craig Thompson to be publishing with you guys? How do you get his stories? How are you picking what you publish, and is it independently owned? Does he own the rights to Ginger, or you guys?
Yeah, he owns the rights to all his stuff. Craig is very savvy about this stuff. And he came to me. There's you probably have noticed that there's a lot less sort of the 90s. There used to be tons of indie comics, like 8 Ball, Love and Rockets, Yummy Fur, Peep Show, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many out there at that point. And since the early 2000s, there's just been a lot less kind of like that sort of like indie comics on the market. There's still a lot of sort of like indie superhero type stuff, indie genre stuff, but not so much of that kind of that sort of more arty vein, or however you want to call that.
Right.
So
I call it the stuff Brian likes. That's what I call it. Stuff he likes. That's what I
I know.
say.
It's funny you mentioned 8 Ball, Love and Rockets, and Hate.
Yeah. I mean, that was my jam in the 90s.
I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of great stuff that indie comics used to really excel at, was putting out those different, more literary, more personal stories.
Exactly.
That's why this ginseng root, like, really, it sounds appeals to me.
Exactly. So, but since 2000s, most publishers like Fantagraphics and Drawn and Quarterly, sort of the top two of that genre, they've sort of all moved on to graphic novels for the most part, and they maybe they publish. I think Drawn and Quarterly still published Optic Nerve, Once in a Blue Moon. And then Love and Rockets still comes out in a floppy, but everything else is pretty much gone. So really nobody is interested in in doing this kind of work. Serializing, this kind of stuff. And I've known Craig for quite a while. When he was sort of trying to figure out what to do with this book, because he had an option to just kind of like sit there for 5 years and just crank it out and then put it out as a graphic novel. That was definitely an option. But he's never done a serialized comic before, and kind of wanted to do it. And after chatting with a few different people, different publishers, we came to an agreement that we would do sort of the serial version of it, and then he still has the option for the graphic novel, and he can take that to any publisher he wants to. Yeah. So we just kind of stuck with kind of did that deal basically, and it turned out great. I really like the way all the issues came out. I'm really happy to be working with one of the great cartoonists that's around today, and I think Craig was happy with the way the series turned out, and it was kind of a win-win all around.
So from like a business perspective, are those companies getting out of more serialized comics because do you think that because they sell better at bookstores as collections and graphic novels, or is it?
I think that was kind of the there was a lot of that tension was happening in the late 90s, early 2000s. It's like, well, we're putting out these comics, but they're all going to get collected into graphic novels. And, so a lot of readers would be waiting for that instead of wanting to find the serialized stuff. They would wait for the collections. And I think, at some point the graphic novels just kind of won, and it was easier to manage. Like you just don't have to do a serialized thing. Right. That's just that's the way it went. I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of cartoonists miss that because there was a way to make a little bit of money kind of while serializing the work, as you kind of get to the graphic novel. And there were many other options where, like with 8-Ball, one of the great things with 8-Ball was like, you could serialize Ghost World or Like a Velvet Glove Cast in Iron, but then also have these like smaller, weirder pieces in there that, where you can kind of try out new ideas and new styles, new things. And, that's really harder to find these days. There's just not that many options for just doing a goofy, funny, great 8-pager or something.
Yeah, and that was speaking of 8-Ball, that was some of Dan Clo's best work. Is some of the shorter stuff that just was filler material, like Art School Confidential.
Art School Confidential. I Love You Deeply and I Hate You Deeply.
Those are great. Yeah, the Lloyd Llewellyn stories. Yeah,
exactly.
Those are really good. So. It's unfortunate that there's that tension because it's sort of like you're saying, the creators seem to be missing out on two potential paychecks if you think about it. The serialized one and then the collection one eventually. What do you?
So let me just quickly follow up on that. So so with Ginseng Roots, that was one of the things we wanted to make sure that we do is we wanted to include a bunch of additional material along with the stuff. So like there's letters pages in there. There's kind of like research stuff that Craig did that we threw in there. A lot of that stuff is just not going to make it to the book. So we kind of created we wanted to create a journey for the reader that's like, oh hey, you're going to be here. You're going to see this as it becomes the graphic novel, and as a reader of the comic, you will have something that you will not get from the graphic novel eventually. So it's if you're a big fan of Craig's and you want to see this happen, this is a fun journey to go on. Essentially, they never got to see sort of the work evolve in this way before. So,
well, that's one of the things that one of the advantages that independent comics has over sort of the big three or big two or whoever you want to say the big ones are. Market share, there really doesn't seem to be much big anybody anymore. but the this sort of like throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks is kind of what's great about the independent comics. For sure. The advantage it has over the sort of factory system of Marvel or DC.
I agree. And the creators retain more control too. And
absolutely. Kind of nice. Yeah. So now what are you working on? I see you got a drawing board back there.
Yeah, right now this is just a study. I'm doing I occasionally do studies of like other artists. So I'm doing a weird study of Jack Kirby's Commandi.
Oh man, that's a big one with us.
Oh, we love Jack Kirby.
We are big Jack Kirby fans.
Yeah, I'm a big Kirby fan too.
I know you are. You put out a story a couple years back about Jack Kirby's time in the war, right? For real?
Yeah, for real. Yeah. That was written and drawn by James Romberger, who some of you may know from what was it? What was it? 8 miles a second. That's what it was called, I think.
Know that one.
It was a short graphic novel that came out from DC in the 90s. Got republished by Fantagraphics not too long ago. But it was just a kind of a great graphic novel that kind of came out of nowhere, and it kind of blew me away. And then like 10 years later, or 15 years later, I ran into this guy James in a convention, and he's like, "I've got all this stuff," and we started working together on a bunch of different things. And then he did this Jack Kirby comic for us, which was great because
And where did that story come from?
Well, Jack told that story at some point. I'm not sure exactly where that. I think it's from some interview of his, where he tells the story of this World War II story of like hiding in the ovens while the Nazis were kind of looking for enemy soldiers or whatever. So it's kind of a bonkers story. But James kind of wanted to compare it to some of his later experiences with like getting cancer. And then also kind of tease out some of the influences from his war years onto his later comics. There's like an essay in the comic that kind of gets into a little bit of that. So it's kind of like a comic and an essay inside. I like a lot writing about comics, so I kind of throw that into a lot of my comics. I like that.
It's a study of the genre.
So
I also write. I write for the Comics Journal. I have a column in the Comics Journal.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, comics in the 80s. Yeah.
That's great.
So is that where Maple Terrace comes from?
I mean, it's a little bit that, but it's. I mean, again, Noah is someone I've known forever, and I've worked with him before on another graphic novel, and we were kind of like sitting in a convention, and he just had this idea of like, hey, what if I follow up on this graphic novel? I have some more ideas about, sort of stories about growing up. And then in this particular case, really getting into comics, like, and kind of telling the story of getting into collecting comics in the 90s during the sort of the image collecting days and the multiple cover.
Remember them well.
I certainly do.
It was really fun to kind of see that develop. I think initially he wasn't going to focus that much on that stuff. That was going to be a little bit in the background, but then it just kind of took over the story and became very much about that.
Yeah, when I was looking through the stuff that you've published, that's the one that really caught my eye. A comic about the boom of the 90s and how investing and we were going to make a fortune and we were going to buy houses with the money we made from these things. I
just got the third issue in the mail the other day. So I have they're going to be in stores, I think, in a couple of weeks or after.
Well, I plan to go look for them now because the story seems
but
like
we did two covers on this one. One is like the regular cover, and then we did like a Rob Liefeld silver ink incentive cover for number 3. So
that's brilliant.
The story seems like something we would both really like.
Oh, that's great.
We love the history of comic books too. Yeah, that's part of the reason why we do this channel, and we wanted to get what was stuck in our brains out to people that thought like us. For the two of us, we work together. We're both teachers, and we would sit on our free time and we would talk about old comic books, old crappy B movies, and stuff like that. And everyone else would leave the room, and it would just be two of us.
I know that feeling exactly. I know that.
And we're like, there's got to be other people like us out there who love this stuff as much as we do. And so we did a podcast for 2 years, and then we transitioned to YouTube.
Cool.
Within the last year, and we just keep putting out the stuff. We're not doing very well on YouTube because we don't follow the model.
We're doing great.
Yeah. The model for YouTube is to continuously put out the same material over and over again. So if we focused on comic books, we'd be doing much better than we are today. But we just can't put ourselves into a one box because we like so many different things. Like,
I hear you.
But it's all the sort of shared universe of things. It all kind of teams up. Chances are, if somebody does like comics, they're also going to want to talk about cult films and
toys that we collect.
Things like that.
I have a normal obsession with collecting old toys.
Yeah.
And
I never got into the toys, but
I see you got into the comic books. I see.
Yeah, I've got a lot of comics here.
So what are you collecting? What do you collect?
Well, right now I'm kind of obviously I read a lot of comics in the 80s. That's kind of my era is 80s and 90s when I was sort of younger, getting into all this stuff. And I still but I am kind of finding things from the 80s that I didn't read before. So for example, I just collected the whole Omega Man. I don't know if you remember that series. The first six
we just picked them up.
Giffen. And I like sci-fi and I like team books, and it's kind of it was an interesting one that I never really read before, so I've been kind of reading that and finding the back issues for that. I am kind of trying to fill out. I have a pretty long run of Conan the Barbarian, so I'm kind of like trying to get to fill out some of those issues that goes back further into the 70s
from the Marvel years.
What's that?
From the Marvel years.
Yeah, they were the first time around. Buscema and Barry Smith and all those.
Barry Windsor-Smith's got some great work there.
Yeah, so I like all that stuff, and I like Robert E. Howard generally speaking. So I'll dip into like some of the magazines as well. Although I haven't collected a lot of those.
The Savage Sword magazine is pretty good.
Yeah, no, I have a few issues of that, and I'm definitely kind of like, when I finish Conan, I'll probably start working on the Savage Sword stuff.
Jump over to Savage Sword magazine
because there's never an end in sight.
No, of course not. What else am I buying these days that's old? I mean, I love going through like dollar bins and just finding random stuff where it's like, oh, I've never seen this, or like I've never tried it. I'll buy it just kind of like just to try it out, and if it sucks, it sucks. It's only $1.
That's where we live. I personally spend a lot of my time at conventions.
Yeah.
And dollar bins and just doing exactly what you said, just pulling something like this looks interesting. I just bought almost an entire run of Dreadstar.
Oh yeah, I just finished reading Dreadstar. Yeah. I love.
I just rebought it. It's a great series.
And the guy had in the dollar bin. He had the entire run at Epic, and he had the first couple of issues when it transfers over to First Comics.
Yeah.
So I bought like something like 30 something issues from the guy in one run. And before
the first what is it, like 20 some are by Starlin, and those and then like later on other people take over on the art, but I love that first 12 issues of that Dreadstar series is great. I just wrote about it on my blog not too long ago too.
Really? And that's I literally just bought it was the last convention I went to, and I was like, this is
I'm a big Starlin fan. I loved I love like his Warlock, Captain Marvel, that he did the Silver Surfer for a long time in the 80s, all that stuff. Yeah, that Silver Surfer run in the 80s is one of my favorites. Like it starts, it's Englehart writing it with Marshall Rogers on the first 12 issues, and then Ron Lim takes over eventually. Those first 40 some issues are really, really, really solid. Yeah, great stuff.
Where can people find your blog?
It's just called transatlantis.net.
Transatlantis?
Atlantis, yeah.
Okay. Transatlantis.net.
Yeah. There hasn't been a post in a while. I have a lot of stuff bubbling up. I'll be probably posting a lot starting in the new year. I've had a lot of logistics issues this year as a publisher because the sickness was such a success. We had to figure out some new ways of doing fulfillment and things like that. So it was kind of a big year for that, and just took me away from writing as much as I wanted to. But
so it was a good thing and a bad thing to have a success.
Yeah, it's one of those good problems that still sucks. You can't
do what you want to
do. You still have to figure it out, and it's still a lot of pain and whatever. But it's it's a good problem, but it's still a problem.
Now, what's coming up next from Uncivilized?
So the sickness continues. The fourth issue will be out in January. It's running a little late. Jenna had some family stuff where she couldn't keep the schedule as much as she wanted to on the art. And then we have some new graphic novels coming up. There's one called Evil Eyes C, by a Turkish cartoonist that lives in America. It's kind of like a mystery story set in Istanbul. That's coming out in March. We're going to collect Maple Terrace into a book. Noah's doing some new pages for that. So that'll be I think in May. I believe we set that for May. And then we will collect the first 5 issues of The Sickness into a trade paperback to get people keep getting people on board on the series, and then continue the series later this year. Later next year. I mean, I think Jenna's going to take like a 3 or 4 month break before hitting the next 4 issues. I think the next 4 issues are like another arc in the story.
Right.
And then let's see what else is going on. We made this box for ginseng roots, so you can put all your issues inside of a box, cool. And it's it's really nice. Perfect to put it up on the shelf, so you can.
How do you get that
easily? What's that?
How do you get that?
What do you mean?
Where would you get it from?
You can buy it from us directly. They will be available through shops as well. This is the second edition of the box. The first edition sold out. Not a lot of shops ordered it, but we just keep selling it, so it's just it's just one of those things where like there's a lot of demand out there, but not every shop kind of knows that it's there, or they don't really carry ginseng roots in the first place, so they a lot of those customers will come to us directly. We had a pretty large subscription list for that comic where several, I think almost like 800 copies were going out every issue to subscribers.
That's great.
So there's definitely, I wish more retailers would kind of take chances on us little guys.
Yeah.
But I totally get it. It's hard out there,
Now, what is the website? It's
uncivilizedbooks.com. Yeah.
Uncivilizedbooks.com.
Yeah, you can check out all these things at uncivilizedbooks.com. Before you mentioned that you've been doing conventions, right?
Yeah, we do conventions. We tend not to do the really superhero ones because our work tends not to be so much in that vein. But we do, like MoCA, the Museum of Comic Art Festival in New York, that's coming up in March. We did SPX in Bethesda, which is Small Press Expo. We might do C2E2 in Chicago this year, which is that's a kind of a bigger convention, more mainstream. Let's see, what else do we do? Those are our main ones. We do a couple in Canada. We do TCAF, the Toronto Comics Art Festival, and then the Montreal Comic Art Festival. Both of those are kind of in the summer. So
no New York Comic Con for you?
I don't think I'm gonna do New York Comic Con. I think Lonnie and Jenna will be there. They tend to go kind of on their own for The Sickness. But yeah, just for us, I don't know if we have enough material for that convention. We have The Sickness, maybe a couple other things that fit, but with the other shows, we'll bring like 20 or 30 titles to those shows, and we'll, all of them will do kind of pretty well across the board, with obviously the newest ones selling the most. But it's a little bit of a, whenever we go to a kind of a more superhero convention, it's like we have to kind of like reintroduce ourselves every single time. And like, it's like to be like, what comics are these? These are kind of weird, which is fine. I get that. I used to work in a comic book store for many years. So I know that, I know that conversation, but our audience kind of, like myself, I straddle those two worlds, in terms of what I read and how, the kind of stuff I put out. But it's not always easy to just like, sort of carry some of that stuff over from one space to the other. So that's our challenge. It's kind of be in those two worlds at the same time.
We're in New York, so we get conventions weekly here. We have something in our area.
MoCA, the MoCA festival.
Well, if you're going to be there, maybe we'll
you should come
up there just to say hello.
I'd like to do that. Yeah, that sounds good.
And another thing, when we go to conventions, we usually go together, and Brian always tends to go to those independent publishers, and pick up something that they have, something interesting that they have. Which at New York Comic Con, it was his first time in quite a few years. I've been going for like the last couple of years, bringing my kids, and Brian went and he immediately went to, a couple of publishers.
I was with Ball 2000 AD. I was with
those two guys from Jersey that were fantastic.
I can't remember. I got that. That was great.
Those guys were great.
We Suck at Comics.
We Suck at Comics was the name of the book. It was fantastic.
Yeah, so those people are represented, but it's unfortunate that they kind of do get lost in the shuffle of all that. And I got to say, the last time we were at New York Comic Con, it was kind of exhausting.
It was exhausting.
I would rather find things like your company with, that I've never heard of and get exposed to new stuff rather than the same thing over and over again,
Yeah.
Have you ever been?
Yeah.
Have you ever been to New York Comic Con?
Yeah, I've been. I used to live in New York. I lived in New York from like 99 until 2008 or so.
Whereabouts?
I started in Queens and Astoria, and then I was in Chelsea on 8th and 19th. And then lived in Brooklyn, kind of by Dumbo, but it was really Vinegar Hill, and for a while they were trying to rebrand the neighborhood as Rambo. Right after that,
I remember that.
So
we're on Staten Island. I've been here my whole life. Brian's been around New York, so
yeah, I've been all over.
Okay. Yeah.
But so one last time, if people want to find your stuff, go to uncivilizedbooks.com.
Yep, that's right, uncivilizedbooks.com. And if you want to check out my blog, it's transatlantis.net.
Yeah, I want to go. I'm going to check that out.
I'm definitely checking out Maple Terraces when I get.
Yeah, I want to find that.
I'll make sure we have a very, very good relationship with our local comic shop. It's Jim Hanley's Universe.
Jim Hanley's orders from us.
We know the guys there very well. I'm going to see if they can get me some copies, even if they don't have the. Left.
Yeah. I'm sure they'll order. They usually order something from us. They don't order huge quantities, but they always order stuff from us. So
yeah. Well, there's a couple of comics.
Quantities.
They order just for me, so. That's good. That's good to know that they're in contact with you guys. They're great. They're great guys. But
yeah, they are.
Tom, thanks for taking the time to.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. That was great. It was fun. And
hopefully we'll see you at.
MoCA in March. Yes, stop by for sure. That'd be great.
We're free in March, right?
Mostly. Yes.
Thank you so much. When we finish, I'll send you a link to this when it's up. It'll probably be up.
Great. I'll spread it around. Sounds good.
Thank you very much. Thanks for taking time. Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Everyone, thanks.
We're sorry to interrupt the end of this video, but we just wanted to say thank you.
And Happy New Year to everyone out there.
Thanks for those that subscribed this year. We're two old guys and we started a YouTube channel later in life, and it's going way better than we thought it would. Special thanks to all of the stores that let us come in, to all the conventions that let us record, to our families, because without them we really couldn't do this.
No.
Hopefully we do much better things in 2024, which many more subscribers. Share this with your friends. Again, thank you. Merry New Year. Recording.
So that was Tom from Uncivilized Comics.
We're hoping to do more of these where we interview someone in the comic book industry. I'm actually reaching out right now to talk with Farland. I seriously am. He's done interviews with some smaller YouTube channels, so maybe he'll like us. And we have some other things coming up too. Thanks for watching. Love what you collect.
Collect what you love.
Goodbye.
I'm putting my...